Hello, Owen here, and today we're going to look at statistics relating to grouped data. Now the group data we have is that of 30 smokers, 4 for instance of the 30 smoked between 11 and 15 cigarettes. Now you're required to determine the mean, median, mode, quartile 1, quartile 3 and the interquartile range, and we did have down the standard deviation, but I'll cover that in a separate video. Now this is the grouped data. This is the grouped data here. Now for instance, 4 smoke between 11 and 15, 7 smokers between 16 and 20, 8 smokers smoke between 21 and 25 cigarettes, and 7 smokers smoke between 26 and 30 cigarettes, and 4 smokers smoke between 31 and 35 cigarettes. Now you should add up those, and that should add up to 30. Now we've 2 formulas here that were often given. This is the x bar, or the mean, and is equal to sigma, the sum of the frequency multiplied by, if you like, the value of the x, and you divide that then by the sum of the frequencies, which in this case is going to be 30. Now the x here is actually going to be the midpoint in the intervals, Now you will see the intervals maybe from 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 25, 25 to 30, etc. But we'll show it this way. Now, next one then is we produce a table. Now what we do at the start of the table, we introduce a new interval, which is between 6 and 10, just one lower than it, and naturally it'll have a frequency of 0. Like this one is taken directly, 11 to 15, 4, 16 to 20, 7, 21 to 25, 8, 26 to 30, 7, 31 to 35. Now the midpoint then, we'll have to find the midpoint of the intervals. So the midpoint of the intervals, you take the lowest from the highest, and if you take the lowest from the highest there, you get 4. Half of 4 is 2, and you add that to 6 and you get 8. Likewise here, 11 to 15, take 11 from 15, you get 4, divide the 4 by 2, and it's 2, and 11 and 2 is 13, and so on along. Now you'll notice that the gap 8 to 13 is 5, 13 to 18 is 5, and you could check that all along. Now the next point, or the next thing we will do, is we will multiply the frequency by the midpoint and put it in this column here. So obviously 8 by 0 is 0, 13 by 4 will give you 52, 18 by 7 will give you 126, 23 by 8 will give you 184, 28 by 7 will give you 196, 33 by 4 will give you 132. Now again, the one is, your teacher may prefer you to use 30 to 35, which will change these somewhat. Now what we will do next is you have to add up the frequencies, and the frequencies, again, it's really a checksum, should end up as 30, and the midpoints by the frequency here, if you add those up, that is 690, and of course the 690 divided by the 30 will give you the mean, which in common language would often be called the average. Now, seeing that we're going to do a cumulative frequency graph, it's just as easy to do it on this table. And the cumulative frequency obviously here is 0. Next one then, so far that it be in this range or lower, would be 4. That number there, frequency 4. Now in this range, under 20 or under, if you like, would be 7 plus 4 would be 11. Or if you'd like to look at the one before there, 4 plus this, 7, will give you 11. This one here, how do we get that? It's 11 plus 8, giving you 19. This one here, 19 plus 7 will give you 26. And 26 plus the 4 that are grouped between 31 and 35 will give you 30. Now you should remember that if you group data, you lose some information. For instance, you know that 4 people smoke between 31 and 35 cigarettes, but you don't know whether they all smoke 31, 32, 33, 34 or 35. So the assumption is really made here. We take a midpoint. That's as near as we can get to it. Now we can't endorse smoking because there is a relationship between smoking and lung cancer. Right, now on to our next slide. And just before we do that, we will have find the midpoint of each interval. We said that. We multiply the midpoint by the frequency to give us that. That's just going over it again. We'll sum the frequencies and we'll sum the midpoints by the frequency to give us that 690. And we'll divide the sum of the midpoints by the frequency and we'll divide that by 30. And when we're at it, as we said, we're going to put in the cumulative frequencies. Now, so next what we have to do is we're going to have to graph this on graph paper, or I used Excel to graph it. Now, what we have to graph is the upper point there, the upper value of the interval against the frequency. And the frequency will be always on the y-axis or the vertical axis. And obviously then the interval will be on the x-axis. So I said that'll be on the vertical axis or the y-axis. So we'll have on the x-axis 10, frequency 0, 15 versus 4, 20, 11, 25, 9, 30, 26, 35, 30. And the frequency again is on the y-axis. So let us have a look at that now. Now here's the graph we produced. And as we said, look, the frequency is on the y-axis and the intervals are here. Now if you're ever producing a graph, make best use of the space. Don't have it, your graph, down in a little corner here. So I like to go maybe a little bit beyond the last point. Now we said here, these are the intervals. So the lowest was 0, was 10 with 0 in that group. So that's 1 point. The next point then here, we could see that the higher of the interval, 15, and there were 4 smokers in that group. The next group then we can see is 20 is the top of the interval, and there were 11 smokers there if you go across that way, and so on. Now your graph then should be something S-shaped, should be shaped in the form of an S, though sometimes you don't have a good imagination to see that. Now so when we have that done, the next thing we want to do is we want to find the median. Now, whereas I don't fully agree with this one, but we're going to take it because the Department of Education in Ireland and the books on it would all say that. So if you want to see the median point, what you do is you go down halfways. We have 30 observations, we go down to 15. But remember always, if you're talking about statistics, it is sometimes it's a little bit better, it's an estimate. It is not, you know, don't show to 2 decimal places. So anyway, for the midpoint here, the frequency, we have 30 smokers. So we're going to say half that is 15. So we're going to go across here until we meet our graph. And when we meet our graph, then we're going to go down on to the x-axis. And you see, actually, it just is a little bit short there, but you see the point. It is meets the x-axis at about 22.4. 20, 21, 22, 22.4. In fact, never, for your own sake, round it up. So we know now that the median there is 22.4. Now the next thing we're asked to do is we want to find quartile 1. And quartile 1 is, if you like, we have 30 observations and we divide 30 by 4. If we divide 30 by 4, we get 7.5. Now the one always is that 7.5 isn't quartile 1, but 7.5 is, you like, is the address, if you like, of quartile 1. So we'll go to the frequency at 7.5. It's a little bit off there as well. We'll go along and we'll drop down onto the x-axis, and we can see here that to 17.7. It's actually 17.75 on the 1. Now that's quartile 1. Next thing we're asked to do is find quartile 3. And quartile 3 is, all it is 30, 3/4 of 30, which is 7.5 multiplied by 3, if you like, or 30 multiplied by 0.75, and that location is 22.5. So locate that on your graph, and you'll go across then again until we meet our graph, and we'll go down onto the x-axis, and this is our value here. So our third quartile is 27.2. It's marked here. Now the third point we're asked, or the next point we're asked to do, which was the fourth point, is find the interquartile range. The interquartile range is quartile 3, value for quartile 3, minus the value for quartile 1. You can make that out there yourself. And what that gives you really is the width, if you like, of the center 50%. And it goes between 17.7 here and 27.2. So an observation fitting in there would be average, if you like, would be average. Now, sometimes if this is relating to salary, you might like to be in quartile, the highest quartile here, top quartile, or the lowest quartile. You wouldn't like to be in the lowest quartile there. Maybe as a smoker, you might like to be. So really, it's in a sense where students often get confused with quartiles, is to divide something up into 4. Divide something up into 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You have only 3 cuts. 1, 2, 3. 3 cuts, and that'll divide it into 4. Now, Very often the median is called quartile 2. So again, just summarizing that, what we're asked to do is we're given group data, and we found out the mean, median, and we found out the mean, we calculated the mean, and then we looked at quartile 1 and quartile 3, and the value for the interquartile range is quartile 3, that value, minus the value for quartile 1. So that's it, to keep it reasonably simple. And what I'll do in the next video, we can look at calculating the standard deviation for grouped data. So that's it. Take care.